Welcome to the Bedtime Sleep, where science becomes a story and wonder waits in the quiet. If you enjoy drifting gently into sleep with thoughtful, poetic journeys through the universe, feel free to subscribe for a new story every evening and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Now, close your eyes, let your breath soften, and come with me. Tonight begins not with a rush, but with a pause, a soft moment under the sky where you lie in the hush of your room, yet feel the stars glowing behind your eyelids. It is in that stillness that the sky begins to speak, not in words, but in shimmer, not in noise, but in rhythm. Above you, a quiet ballet of rocks glides through the darkness. You cannot hear them move. You cannot feel their weight. Yet they are there, countless stones, each with a past older than the earth. They drift like forgotten thoughts of the cosmos, neither alive nor lifeless, simply existing in the slow language of time. These are the asteroids, some the size of cities, some small enough to hold in your hand. They do not shine like stars. They do not roar like comets. Instead, they float, patient and silent, wrapped in the velvet of space. And yet, within them is something remarkable. Iron, gold, platinum, elements your world has always treasured. But more than riches, they hold memory. Each asteroid is a page torn from a very old book, a chapter in the story of how everything began. To truly understand what these space rocks mean, you must first know that they are not intruders in the solar system. They are leftovers, not accidents. Remnants of a time before planets had names, before moons circled, before Earth was even dust. Imagine the earliest days of our solar system, a swirling cloud of gas and dust circling a new star. That star was your sun, but younger, brighter, still settling into its role. Around it, particles began to stick together, drawn by gravity, nudging and clumping into larger and larger bodies. Some became planets, their paths cleared, their orbits steady. Others didn't make it. Their stories were interrupted, their growth cut short. They stayed behind, in the cracks between planets, in silent belts and drifting trails, becoming asteroids. They are not just rocks. They are frozen intentions, what might have been. Planets that never formed. Histories that never unfolded. Each one a fragment of cosmic ambition. Now they float, like seeds that never rooted, suspended in the silence between worlds. And because they never melted or changed much, they still carry the original recipe of the solar system. You could hold one, in your imagination, in your palm. Its surface rough, dusted with carbon or metal, speckled with tiny craters from countless tiny collisions. Inside, locked away, are atoms forged in ancient stars, elements born in explosions far older than Earth. Some asteroids, called carbonaceous chondrites, carry molecules that resemble the building blocks of life. Not life itself, but whispers of it. Possibilities. Scientists have even found amino acids, the letters of biology, on stones that fell from space. You wonder, could these rocks have delivered the first seeds of life to Earth? It is a gentle question, not one of certainty, but of wonder. For in the silence of the sky, perhaps even life needed a traveler. There are others, metallic and dense, gleaming with iron and nickel, like ancient hearts of failed planets. In them, platinum shines, gold lies folded in metal, and rare elements wait untouched for billions of years. You feel the pull of them, not just in wealth, but in their mystery, their endurance. How they remain, unchanged, while worlds rise and fall. How they drift, bearing the weight of untouched time. And yet, despite their richness and their age, they are invisible to the hurried world. Few look up and see them. Fewer still understand. But tonight you do. You lie still, your breathing slow. And in that stillness, you begin to sense their rhythm. They pass above not to scare or to warn, but to remind that something ancient watches quietly, bearing witness to your planet's journey. There is something humbling about that while you live your life, brief and burning, stones older than mountains glide silently above you, holding secrets you are only beginning to ask. You might ask why we care. Why reach for these distant, drifting things? Because in them is more than metal. In them is memory. In them is the history we never saw, the time before time. And in them, perhaps, is the key to gentler futures. But to dream of touching them, you must first know how they formed, how heat and dust and chaos gave birth to them, how they became the silent bones of the solar system, how the violence of creation left behind these quiet survivors. So now, as your thoughts drift slowly outward, let them carry you backwards, not just through distance, but through time. Let the asteroids guide you, like night birds, back to when fire ruled and everything was new. Because to truly understand the quiet gold above, you must go back to when fire became stone. You are still, but your mind begins to move backward now. The stars fade, replaced by something hotter, closer, louder. Time unwinds slowly, like a ribbon falling from the sky, and you find yourself floating through a different universe. It is the same space you know, the solar system, but it is young, untamed, and burning. Here, there is no Earth yet, no moon, no names for anything. Only a newborn star in the center, glowing like a wound in the dark. It is your sun, just born, just opening its eyes. Around it spins a swirling disk of gas, dust, ice, and rock. It moves in spirals, in waves, in spiraling chaos. This is the solar nebula, a cradle for planets, a storm of possibility. You drift through it like a mote of dust, small and invisible among the tumbling debris. Chunks of stone the size of mountains rush past. Grains of metal melt and fuse. Everything crashes, collides, combines. It is a ballet of destruction, yet it is also birth. In this violence, things begin to stick. Gravity takes hold, pulling clumps into clumps, growing larger, rounder, heavier. These are planetesimals, the first bodies. Some will grow large enough to become planets. Others will never quite make it. And those that remain in between, too big to vanish, too small to rule, will become the asteroids. You pass near one now, a rough, spinning body, still molten at its core. It glows faintly with inner heat, its surface rippling with cracks, like cooling lava. Inside, metals begin to settle. Iron sinks, silicates rise. A structure begins to form, not with hands, but through the slow laws of nature. You sense the weight of the past in this one body. It is not just stone, it is history solidified. Frozen lightning, a piece of the sky's fire, made quiet forever. As the ages unfold, the disk thins. Dust fades. The big planets form and claim their space. Jupiter, massive and loud, shapes the middle distance. Its gravity stirs the remnants, prevents many asteroids from ever joining together. What's left behind becomes the belt, a band of rock and silence between Mars and Jupiter. The asteroids settle there, like ashes from a fire that once burned too brightly. You drift slowly through this belt, your mind still glowing from the heat of ancient time. Each asteroid you pass is different. some smooth and metallic, others porous and black with carbon. They are not alike, because their parents were not alike. Each one carries a different part of the solar nebula's memory. Together, they are a museum with no walls, a scattered collection of beginnings. The metallic ones, the M-type, may come from the cores of shattered planetesimals, fragments of planets that almost were, broken in the storm of their own making. The carbon-rich ones, the C-type, are darker than coal and colder than moonlight. They are older, less changed, holding the chemistry of the solar system's first breath. There are stony S-types, too, rich in silicates, the bones of ancient crusts. Altogether, these asteroids tell a story, in three voices: iron, carbon, and stone. You hover among them, watching them turn slowly in the endless dark. Their orbits are not perfect. Some spin like tops, others tumble unpredictably. A few drift too close to planets and are slung away, or pulled inward toward the sun. Some fall toward Earth. They become meteors, those sudden streaks of light across the night sky. Brief, beautiful, but before they burn, they were part of this quiet crowd. We sometimes call them space rocks, but the word rock seems too simple, too ordinary. They are the cooled fire of creation, the solid breath of stars long gone. And though they no longer glow, they still carry heat, not in temperature, but in story. Even now, missions are sent to study them, to touch them gently, to read what they remember, because in the asteroid belt lies the unshaped part of our solar system. What might have been, what still could be. You are beginning to understand something. These stones are not debris. They are ingredients, unmixed, unspoiled, waiting, like flour before bread, like notes before music. They are the untouched before the masterpiece. And within them, if we listen carefully, if we learn their language, we may hear echoes of life's earliest whisper. Because before asteroids became miners' dreams, before they were charts and targets, they were simply born of heat and time, of fire becoming stone. And now, as your thoughts cool from the ancient heat, you begin to wonder, what remains of that gold and iron today? Where is it hiding? How do we find it? Your body rests. Your mind floats through the dust. And ahead, in the silence between planets, you sense a trail forming, a path towards something shimmering in the void. You float now in the quiet middle, not quite near the warmth of the inner planets, not far enough to touch the cold breath of the outer giants. This is the in-between, a ring of silence circling gently around the sun. Here lies the asteroid belt, not a traffic jam, not a solid ring, but a wide field of solitude, where distance stretches like soft breath between every stone. You drift past them slowly, not dodging, for the space between is vast. Each asteroid keeps its distance, spinning gently, orbiting patiently, as if in a long, slow dance they've rehearsed for billions of years. Most of them live between Mars and Jupiter, two planets so different they seem to sing in opposite keys. Mars is dry and red, whispering of past waters. Jupiter is enormous and stormy, always booming. And between them lies this quiet place, where voices are softer and stories older. You come close to one. It does not glow, but it reflects just enough light to show its craters, its cracks, its patches of mineral dust. It looks unremarkable, but in its surface hides a record no planet can preserve. You are looking at a C-type asteroid now, dark, rich in carbon, full of ancient molecules shaped when the solar system was just a thought. Its color is soot-like, its surface soft and dusty like powdered stone. Inside it, complex compounds lie curled, not alive, not speaking. but offering hints of life's early alphabet. Water traces, amino acids, pieces of the story Earth would later continue. You drift again, and another comes near. Brighter, harder, colder. This is an M-type asteroid. It gleams slightly with nickel and iron, like a small, forgotten machine part. From a planet that was never finished. It may be the core of a shattered world. Imagine something once large and molten, smashed apart by a cosmic collision. Its heart thrown into space like a bell with no song. This piece, this remnant, now spins alone, silent, dense, and metallic. Such bodies are rare but rich. Within them may lie more platinum than Earth has ever mined. You begin to understand why some humans look upward not for stars, but for supply, for metals locked in orbit, free from the soil and scars of Earth. There are also S-types, stony, sunlit, ordinary seeming. They wear the dust of millennia, speckled with silicates, the kind of stone that once formed Earth's early crust. Not dramatic, but important. Foundations often look simple. Together, these three types C, M, and S make up the belt's population. They differ in shine and shape, but all carry messages. All carry value. You think now not of planets, but of possibilities. Because while planets are final drafts, asteroids are footnotes, raw and real. Each one telling a slightly different version of how the solar system came to be. Even in their silence, they shift slowly. Gravity nudges them. Jupiter's pull stirs the belt like a slow spoon. Some asteroids are pushed inward, finding new paths toward the sun. These become near-Earth objects, closer than we often realize. But most stay where they are, in orbits that have held them for eons. Occasionally, they gather in families, groups that share a common ancestor. Perhaps they once belonged to a larger body, a parent broken by time or force. Astronomers name these families like storytellers. Eos, Themis, Flora, not just for identification, but because naming gives shape to wonder. As you glide through this space, you notice how these stones exist between worlds, not just in space, but in time, in purpose, and thought. They are leftovers, yes, but not forgotten, not waste, but waiting. Waiting to be seen, to be studied, perhaps even to be visited. Because the belt is not just a graveyard of failed worlds. It is a treasure field, and treasures come in many forms. Not just gold, but knowledge, history, memory. You remember now how fire became stone. And here, in the belts between the worlds, you see the next layer. How stone becomes signal, not just a product of chaos, but a clue to what came before and what might still come. The asteroids do not compete. They do not shout. They simply are. And in that being, they offer us mirrors. Some are rich in metals, some in mysteries, and all of them remain where planets never reached. In the middle spaces, between Mars and Jupiter, between silence and discovery. Now, as your thoughts float through these belts, you wonder what it would take to reach one, to land softly, to touch a story that never became a planet, to mine not just for profit, but for understanding. But to do that, we must ask, what is truly inside these ancient stones? And can they really offer the kind of riches that might change the story of Earth itself? You drift now toward a single asteroid. It hangs like a quiet question in the dark, not spinning quickly, not blazing bright, but resting as if it knows you are watching. From a distance, it looks like any other. Rough surface, muted color, craters softly pressed in. But inside lies more than stone. Inside is iron, pure and ancient. Nickel, dense and gleaming in the light of the faraway sun. Even rarer metals, platinum, palladium, iridium, stacked quietly like coins never spent. This is not fiction. This is not a dream told by miners around a fire. It is real. Floating in space are bodies so rich in metal, they could rewrite Earth's economy. You pause here, beside it, not to claim it, not to measure it, but to feel the strange weight of it. Not physical, but potential. How can this be? How can something so small, so cold, hold such wealth? Because in space, metal does not hide. There is no crust to dig through, no magma to separate iron from stone. The processes that shaped Earth's body, the melting, the crushing, the folding, never finished here. What formed on these asteroids is still exposed, still close to the surface, still within reach. Imagine Earth as a locked vault. Its core is rich, but buried miles below bedrock. Now imagine an asteroid as a broken door. What's valuable lies just behind it, unguarded, scattered, waiting. A single metallic asteroid, just a kilometer wide, could contain trillions of dollars in rare metals. It sounds strange to measure a stone in currency, but this is how some dreamers see it. Not because they are greedy, but because they see potential. A new source, a new frontier. A way to meet the world's needs. Without carving deeper into Earth's skin, you float beside this body, and you feel how still it is. No wind, no gravity as you know it, just silence and time. Your fingers and imagination trace its surface. It feels brittle in places, dense in others. Some parts have cracks that reach into shadow. Others gleam faintly with the shimmer of raw metal. It is not polished. It is not beautiful in a way a jewel is, but it holds something deeper. A promise. Humans have always looked to the ground for treasure. Now, they look up, and for good reason, because Earth's crust is running out of the easy stuff. The ores are deeper, rarer, harder to reach. The cost of digging grows. The damage of digging grows. But here, in this drifting body, is a different story. A supply not buried, but suspended. A source not hidden, but hovering. Of course, it is not simple. You cannot just reach out and gather it. There are technical puzzles, economic questions, and ethical ones too. But for now, let's stay with the wonder that such wealth exists at all. Untouched, silent, ancient. Wealth not just in money, but in memory. Because every bit of metal here was made in stars. Not the kind that twinkle, but the kind that end their lives in fire. Supernovae. Massive stellar deaths that create the heaviest elements. Gold does not come from Earth. It comes from cataclysms. It comes from the collapse of suns. And somehow, some of it landed here. On this asteroid. On this quiet, drifting page of cosmic history. So when we say rich, we must mean it in more ways than one. Rich in platinum, yes. But rich also in origin. Rich in the fingerprints of exploding stars. You think again of Earth, of how we mine and melt and dig. And you wonder, could we do this differently? Could we reach up instead of down? Could the sky relieve the soil? That is the hope behind asteroid mining. Not to become wealthy, but to become wise. To meet human needs without wounding the planet further. To reuse the ancient material already drifting nearby. To think of the solar system as a shared pantry, not to take without care, but to harvest with balance. It is not a fantasy. It is a future that engineers sketch quietly, that investors whisper about, that scientists prepare for, one orbit at a time. Of course, there is risk. There is always risk in ambition. But here, for this moment, you feel only the awe. The quiet astonishment that something as small as a tumbling rock can carry so much, not just iron, but imagination, not just gold, but guidance. Because to mine an asteroid is not just to break it open now, but to listen, to learn, to gather gently what the universe has scattered. You close your eyes, and you feel the hum of it, the possibility, the patience, the pull of something just beginning. You don't need to rush, because the asteroids wait. They've waited for billions of years. They can wait a little longer. And as you drift away from this one, you feel something new. A desire to touch, yes, but also to approach with reverence. Because before we mine, we must meet. Before we take, we must understand. And so the next question rises. Soft as starlight. Who has already tried? Have we touched these stones before? The stars feel closer tonight. Or maybe it's your thoughts that are reaching higher, drifting softly, not toward planets or moons, but toward smaller, quieter things. Things that have waited in silence for so long, and were finally touched, not by hands, but by intention, by machines that traveled farther than any human gaze had gone, with arms that extended not to take, but to listen. This is the story of the first touch, the moment when humanity reached for an asteroid, not to claim it, but to say, "We see you." You begin with Hayabusa, a quiet name, a gentle mission. It means peregrine falcon in Japanese, a bird that moves fast, sharp, and sure. And like its namesake, Hayabusa moved with care toward an ancient rock named Itakawa. Launched in 2003. It took 2 years to arrive. 2 years through space, carrying questions as payload. Itakawa was small, just a half-kilometer long, shaped like a peanut, covered in gravel and mystery. Hayabusa did not land. It hovered, danced close, and extended a sampling horn. A breath, a moment, and dust rose. A few particles, no more than a teaspoon, began the long journey back to Earth. It may sound small, but in science, small is enough, because within those grains was time, 4.5 billion years of it. For the first time, we had material from an asteroid, not as a meteorite crashing to Earth, but as a message carefully handed over. And the sky grew a little smaller, a little more reachable. Later came Hayabusa 2, a wiser sibling, with new tools and bolder dreams. Its destination, Ryugu. Ryugu was darker, more massive, a diamond-shaped body spinning slowly in the void. Its surface was rough, ancient, and it held something precious, a sample that had never been touched by Earth's atmosphere. Hayabusa 2 did more than collect dust. It fired a small projectile, made a crater, took a sample from the untouched interior. It saw beneath the skin, and in 2020, the capsule returned, falling softly into the desert of South Australia, carrying tiny bits of a world, older than any history we know. You drift now toward another story, OSIRIS-RX. A mission from NASA, sent to meet Bennu, a rock the size of a skyscraper, with a chance, small but real, of one day striking Earth. Bennu is a time capsule, a rubble pile held together by whispers of gravity. Touching it would not be easy. Its surface was not smooth, but full of unexpected boulders. Still, OSIRIS-RX approached, carefully, slowly, until one day in 2020, it reached out. A robotic arm descended. A puff of nitrogen gas stirred the dust. And then, it pulled away, holding a sample within. Thousands of particles. History captured. The return journey would take years, but the connection had been made. sky to machine, stone to story. These were not mining missions. They did not seek profit. They sought understanding. They asked, "What is inside you? Where did you come from? What can you tell us about the beginning?" The data returned changed everything. We found organic molecules. We found minerals altered by water. We found proof that even in the coldest places, something soft had once passed through. These missions showed us that asteroids are not just targets. They're neighbors. They're archives. And they are reachable. You imagine now a future probe, gliding toward another asteroid, carrying not just instruments, but intention, not just to study, but to harvest. But before we mine, we must first learn to land, to linger, to listen. And the first touches, Hayabusa, Osiris-RX, and others still to come, are like the first words in a long conversation, because one day, we may not send machines just to collect samples. We may send them to build, to refine, to gather resources and bring them home, or use them there in space itself. But the lessons from the first touches remain. Touch with care, touch with questions, touch with patience, because these bodies are old, and they have waited long. They are not empty. They are full of meaning, of time, of the quiet music of matter. And now, as you float away from these first encounters, you feel something new, a sense of readiness. We have touched the stones. We have held their dust. And now the question rises gently. What happens when we try to take more? Can we mine the stars without forgetting their story? Out here, there is no clang of metal, no rumble of drills or thundering carts, no dust clouds rising, no sweat, no sit. Asteroid mining will not echo like Earth's old mines. It will whisper. It will glide. It will reach, very gently, across darkness. You drift slowly now toward the idea of a mine with no ground. No tunnels, no seams in stone. A mine that orbits, that turns slowly in the light of a distant sun. And you wonder, how do we take from a world that cannot hold you? How do you dig where there is no gravity? No floor beneath your feet? Nowhere to carry the sound of your tools? The answer begins with imagining a different kind of miner. Not a person with a helmet and lantern, but a robot with arms like pedals. A machine that can hover, that can anchor gently, and feel the surface instead of smashing it. Some will land softly. Some will never land at all. They will fly just above the surface and collect from afar, like bees floating near a bloom, gathering not nectar, but dust, regolith, and rich metal grains. Others may wrap themselves around a small asteroid, hug it tight, and begin to melt its contents from within, using heat, using microwaves, using gentle lasers, not blasts. In space, force is dangerous. Push too hard, and you fly away. Drill too quickly, and you shatter what you meant to hold. So these miners must be patient. Their tools must breathe with the asteroid. Match its spin. Understand its rhythm. Imagine arms with fingers tipped in magnets, pulling iron grains from dusty stone. Imagine inflatable collectors, like fabric flowers, catching loose fragments as they drift naturally in the asteroid's weak gravity. Some methods will crush and sort, not underground, but in sealed containers that sift and separate, like gentle kitchens of space. And what they gather: platinum, nickel, water ice, carbon, may be used in different ways. Some materials will return to Earth, packed tightly and protected, falling gently through the atmosphere like modern treasure. But some may stay in orbit, refined and stored in space, to be used not for profit, but for progress. Because space needs supplies. Building an orbit is easier than lifting from Earth. If we can mine water, we can drink, we can grow, we can make rocket fuel from hydrogen and oxygen, turning asteroids into cosmic gas stations. If we can mine metals, we can build satellites, space stations, maybe even homes, without tearing more from Earth's crust. This is not science fiction. Prototypes exist. Plans are drawn. Some are small, starting with near-Earth asteroids. Easy to reach, easy to study. Others look farther, toward the belt, toward Trojan asteroids that move with planets, toward icy objects rich in frozen gases. But all must begin with precision, with slow work, with a respect for the strangeness of mining in a place where gravity is more a whisper than a rule. And here you pause, because while these tools are clever, you wonder about their purpose. Is it only profit? Only metal to sell? Or is there something gentler in this act? A way of learning, of gathering without scarring, of expanding without invading? We once learned to farm the earth instead of strip it. Can we learn to harvest space instead of conquering it? The machines may be smart, but the question is still human. What do we want from the sky? And what are we willing to give back? As you float among these imagined tools, you see more than engineering. You see a dance. Machines that move with asteroids, not against them. You hear not the sound of drills, but the hum of understanding. A new kind of mining, made not of tunnels, but of timing. Not of force, but of finesse. And maybe that's the answer. To mine in space is not to dominate, but to collaborate, to take what is offered, without demanding too much. As your thoughts settle, you picture one of these robotic miners, reaching out in silence, pressing softly into a surface untouched for eons, and lifting a grain of gold that once danced through the remains of a dead star. That moment, silent, slow, sacred, is not just the beginning of industry. It is the beginning of relationship. And perhaps that's the future. Not mining as conquest, but as a form of listening, a way to live in the solar system without scarring it. But now another question rises in your mind. If we begin to take, how do we decide who gets what? Whose hands will hold the sky's treasure? You lie still beneath an open sky. But tonight, your thoughts drift farther, not toward stars or engines or metal, but toward meaning, toward questions older than loss, but now cast into orbit. Who owns the silence above you? Who owns the drifting stones? The orbiting treasure, the untouched dust that circles in patient loops between worlds? On Earth, we divide. We fence, file, register, claim. We say, this is mine. We build walls around resources, assign names to soil, paint maps with borders. But in space, space was meant to be different. The first treaty said so. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967. A quiet agreement whispered during a noisy era, declared that space belongs to all humankind. No nation may claim the moon. No land deeds on Mars. No sovereignty over the stars. It was beautiful, hopeful, shared. A gesture not of ownership, but of unity. And yet, even then, asteroids drifted silently by, rich with the very things that stir desire. Gold, iron, water, platinum. The treaty said nations may not own celestial bodies, but it said little about companies, about mining, about resources. And so new laws were written, not globally, but nationally. The U.S. passed a law in 2015, allowing its citizens to own resources extracted from space. Luxembourg followed. Then others, each adding a voice to the unfolding conversation. These laws do not claim the rock itself, only what is removed from it, like gathering seashells from a beach, without claiming the ocean. But the beach, in this case, has no lifeguard, no shared rulebook, no global system to decide who gets what, when, or how. So we float in legal twilight, a space between agreement and ambition, between treaties written for peace and industries hungry for access. You drift deeper into this thought, because ownership is not just about law. It's about story, about who writes the future. If one company mines a rich asteroid, do they owe something to others? To Earth? To the future? Or only to shareholders? If we extract water from a passing body and use it to fuel missions, is that progress? Or is it a first step down a path that leads to cosmic enclosure? And what of equity? What of the nations without launch pads, without satellites, without capital to chase the drifting treasure? Will they be left behind? Earthbound. As the wealthy reach for the sky's minerals, it is not yet clear. But the questions matter now, before the first mines open, because once the engines start, they may not stop. You remember how Earth was divided, first by flags, then by fences, then by force. Can we do space differently? Can we learn? Can we build a model not of taking, but of tending? Some propose new treaties, space commons, global resource sharing frameworks, royalty systems that support all humanity, from the wealth of the void. Others imagine public missions, international fleets, science-first approaches that mine not for money, but for shared growth. And still, others say the market will decide, as it always does, that ownership will follow investment, that profit will lead the way. You rest within these thoughts like mist. There is no answer tonight, only a sky too vast for simple rules. But you know this. Before we take, we must agree. Before we divide, we must define not just what is allowed, but what is wise, what is kind, what honors the stillness of the stars. Perhaps the question is not who owns the sky, but how do we belong to it? Not by drawing lines, but by drawing near. Not by claiming, but by caring. And so, as your breath slows, you imagine a different kind of ownership. Not of property, but of purpose. A future where we mine carefully, share widely, and listen deeply to the silence we enter. Because the asteroids are watching, and their stories will shape not just technology, but our humanity. Now, as you drift farther into the night, another question stirs beneath this one. If the sky offers wealth, will it change how we live on Earth? You are still here on Earth, where the ground feels solid beneath your body, and the air presses gently on your chest. But your thoughts, they rise like seeds on wind, reaching toward the orbits above. Because tonight, you wonder what happens down here when the sky begins to give. If asteroid mining becomes real, not just plans or blueprints, but payloads returned, metals melted, resources delivered. What changes? The first change may be quiet. A report, a press release, a small quantity of platinum, returned from orbit, analyzed and sold. And then the world begins to stir. Because platinum is rare here, so are iridium, osmium, rhodium, metals that shape the bones of technology, that catalyze, conduct, and endure. We dig for them in deep, dangerous places, mine scar mountains. Communities depend on fragile veins of Earth's crust. But now, some of that pressure might lift. If asteroid resources flow, will Earth's wounds begin to heal? Will we close the deepest pits, let forests regrow, and breathe easier, knowing the stars offer us a second source? Or will we demand more? Always more, faster, cheaper, expanding the hunger instead of easing it? You imagine economies shifting, industries adapting, new companies rising, not to drill, but to orbit, not to mine the crust, but to manage supply lines from the sky. Jobs once held in steel-toed boots may shift to keyboards and control rooms. Wealth may move from beneath the soil to beyond the stratosphere, and countries rich in space technology may rise even higher, while those grounded by gravity must scramble to catch up. This is the question that echoes. Will asteroid mining level the playing field, or tilt it further? But you also imagine another ripple, a softer one. If we can get rare metals from space, might we stop tearing them from sacred places? Might we leave certain lands alone? Let rivers run. Let caves remain closed. Let indigenous voices be heard. Without the pressure of profit, asteroid mining, if done wisely, could be an offering, not just of material, but of choice. A chance to reduce Earth's burden, to slow the bleeding of the crust, to give back to the ground by looking up. But it must be done with care, because convenience is tempting, and wealth moves quickly. You picture markets fluctuating, with news of a successful haul, stock tickers blinking, in response to a spacecraft's slow descent. And you wonder, will we prepare? Will we build systems that share, that think long-term, that honor both planets and people? Perhaps new treaties will emerge, not just about space law, but about Earth care. Agreements that say, for every ton taken from the sky, let something be restored down here. Let profits fund reforestation. Let technologies aid clean water. Let metal from asteroids build homes, not only rockets. You imagine education transforming, children learning not just where metals come from, but how to mine gently, how to engineer peace into progress, how to ask not just can we, but should we, in this new world. Earth is not forgotten. It is not abandoned. As we drift upward, instead, it becomes more precious. Because when you look from orbit, when you float above in silence, you see how fragile it is. This blue cradle in a dark ocean. And maybe asteroid mining teaches us humility. Maybe it reminds us that abundance does not excuse waste. That reach should not replace reverence. You take a slow breath. Feel the gravity. Feel your body press into the mattress, into the ground, into the planet that made you. And as you do, you wonder, what if the sky becomes a mirror, reflecting not just our ambition, but our maturity, our capacity to evolve? The asteroids offer gold, but also reflection, and how we use what they give may decide the story Earth becomes. Now, as your eyes soften with sleep, another question gently unfolds. If space can change Earth's future, can it change Earth's identity? You are drifting now, not just through ideas, but through eras, not decades, but deep time. The kind of time where species change shape, where homes become horizons, and in the soft darkness, you ask something ancient in a brand new way. Are we meant to stay here forever, on Earth? Or is something inside us already walking outward, across the sky? Asteroid mining seems like a detail, a technical footnote in the story of exploration. But look closer. It may be the scaffolding of something much bigger, because to live in space, not just visit, not just orbit, but live, We must use what space gives: water from asteroids to drink, to grow food, to split into fuel, metal from asteroids to build, hulls, habitats, tools, anchors in the vastness. And in that vision, asteroid mining is not conquest. It is continuity, a thread that ties survival to ingenuity, necessity to imagination. Already, minds are sketching blueprints, not just for missions, but for homes. Cylindrical stations turning slowly, creating artificial gravity. Moon bases with walls lined in regolith to shield from radiation. Asteroid settlements carved gently into the bodies of rock itself. You float inside one now. In your thoughts, the walls are warm, lined with gathered metal. The air is light, but enough. Outside, space. Inside, something human. And you feel it. Not isolation, but possibility. To be a space species is not just to survive in vacuum. It's to bring Earth with us. It's breath. It's memory. It's wisdom. It's to plant roots in orbit while remembering the soil. Asteroid mining, then, becomes more than industry. It becomes foundation, not just for machines, but for belonging. Because if we're to spread outward, we must carry sustainability with us. No atmosphere to waste. No endless forests to cut. Only precision. Only cycles. Only what we can renew. And so, you realize, space may teach us how to be better stewards. Because in the vacuum, nothing is free. Every resource is precious. Every mistake, magnified. Living in space could make us wiser. It could sharpen our ethics alongside our tools. It could remind us that technology without humility is dangerous, but with it, transformative. You think of generations born up there, children raised among stars and machinery, learning constellations not as stories, but as neighbors. And you wonder, what will they call themselves? Not Earthlings, not Martians. Something new, something that includes both rock and orbit, planet and platform. Their bodies may change, their rhythms will shift, but if we remember who we are, they will carry kindness with them, not a race of takers, but of tenders, not builders of empires, but of ecosystems. That is the hope. That is the promise. Glowing inside each asteroid, we dare to reach. But to become a space species, we must first ask, what parts of us are worth carrying forward? And what should we leave behind? Old scars? Old greed? Or only the parts that sing? Curiosity, creativity, cooperation? The stars do not demand perfection, only presence, only persistence, and in every sample returned, every probe launched, every grain of stardust held, we are practicing presence. We are rehearsing a new kind of belonging, one that floats, but does not drift, one that explores, but does not erase. You breathe in, and you feel the weight of it. Not fear, but awe, because to become a space-faring species is not to abandon Earth. It is to amplify it, to let its lessons echo outward, into the silence. And as your breath slows again, a new thought stirs softly at the edge of sleep. If we do become citizens of the stars, how will we remember where we came from? The dust drifts slowly, almost motionless in the silence of space, a soft halo around a rocky body, older than any city, older than any name. You drift with it now, your thoughts wrapped in this gentle cloud, not fearful, not hurried, just listening. This dust is not empty. It is memory, each tiny particle, Each ancient grain holds within it the record of the beginning, before earth cooled, before oceans stirred, before breath ever touched the air. This dust floated, raw, untouched, waiting. Asteroids are not just resources. They are archives, unopened books, written in mineral and metal, binding together the chemistry of stars with the birth of planets. Some scientists say life may have started this way, that amino acids, those quiet builders of biology, rode to Earth on meteors, hidden in frozen stone. That memory, too, is written in dust, a message not in ink, but in carbon, not in alphabet, but in pattern. You feel a softness here, not just physical, but spiritual, because when you touch asteroid dust, you are touching your own past, your own potential. It is the same carbon that builds your bones, the same iron that moves in your blood, the same oxygen that rides in water and stone. We are not just looking out into space. We are looking back into ourselves. And so as we mine, as we gather, as we build, we must also remember not just what we are doing, but what we are touching, not just the utility of dust, but the poetry in it. You imagine a future spacecraft, sleek, glowing, intelligent, returning not just with ore, but with reverence, a sample chamber handled like a sacred box, scientists waiting not to profit, but to learn, a single particle, held in a gloved hand, studied for what it says about the heat of early suns, the collisions that shape the moon, the quiet storylines that folded into your very cells. And perhaps, just perhaps, we will preserve some of these bodies, mark them not as minds, but as memory vaults. Let them float untouched, silent monuments to the time before time, because not every rock must be taken. Some must be witnessed, honored, kept whole, so the future can read what we almost forgot. Here, in the drifting dust, there is a lesson. That progress without memory is not wisdom. That movement without reflection is just noise. So maybe our future is not just technical, but tender, not just strong, but soft. Maybe the next explorers will carry with them not just fuel and food, but poems, songs of earth, stories of sky, so that even when they build new homes, in orbit or on moons, they carry the roots with them, because the dust we come from must never become disposable. You breathe slowly and feel it settle inside you. This truth that memory lives everywhere, in fingerprints, in fossils, in meteorite fragments tucked in museums, and in children's pockets. And one day, long from now, when Earth is a shimmering crescent in someone's sky, they will open a box of asteroid dust and feel their hearts soften, not because it is rare, but because it is familiar, because even among the stars, we still need to remember where we began. And as this thought cradles you in the dark, you wonder, if memory is in dust, what dreams might be waiting in the light? And now you rest, not just from the journey across asteroids and orbiting metal, but from the deeper current, the quiet reflection that space leaves within you. The last chapter drifted into light, not the kind that burns, but the kind that reveals. And here, in the hush between stars, you've seen something tender in all that floats. The cosmos gave us more than treasure. It gave us time. Time to think differently. Time to grow slowly. Time to wonder without needing answers. Asteroid mining, you learned, is not simply about what we take, but who we become while reaching. And so you lie back now, a little more still, a little more spacious inside, with stardust in your thoughts, and Earth's gravity gently tugging at your chest. You are part of it now. The story, the question, the silence, the light. Thank you for drifting with us tonight. Here on the Bedtime Sleep. If you felt wonder, if your thoughts softened, if your dreams deepened, we hope you'll return again tomorrow. Subscribe for more stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. And until then, sleep well and let your mind float, where the stars remember what we've only just begun to learn.